They really want to know.
It's true. So we got to do the 1, 2, 3. Ready?
Okay.
You suck. Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner. With me, as always, as of late, Paul O'Neill. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I guess I'm the co-host now, so I'll be here every week.
You know, I don't like it. Seems host is very combative, and I don't like that because people already think that I rule over you with an iron will and an iron thumb, and I don't like that that combativeness. So we'll just say you are the beta primary host.
Wow.
And I'll
That
go
is
with
way worse.
I don't know if that's worse. It's all about perspective. If you reframe it in a certain way,
Bro, you called me beta.
and then I can be the alpha
That
or
is
the
not
omega.
That's not what's happening.
I'll go omega, you can be alpha. There you go. That's fair.
That's more fair. But yeah, you know what? People didn't necessarily know how to respond last week. I had a few messages like, why is Tony bullying you? And to be honest, I was caught a little bit off guard because I wasn't expecting much of a pushback on what I was saying. But I think that makes for a better podcast in a lot of ways, because if we agreed on everything, it wouldn't make much sense.
Well, yeah,
and it wouldn't make for much of a podcast if I said, hey, this is what I think. And you said, yeah, sure.
Like intellectual discourse is the epitome of what good conversation's all about. And it's nice to be able to have that, right? Like I've had conversations with people where on the show where they would say something and I'd say, I don't really agree with that. This is what I think. And then as soon as I ended it, their rebuttal would be the exact same thing that I just said. They like switch their opinion automatically. And I'm like, well, that's not good. I don't want that. I want you to stay strong with your opinion, but
right. Like my opinion on what, like, especially the orthotics thing, it's not going to change. I'm literally missing pieces of my knee. My knee doesn't track properly. It's never going to, and there's no amount of additional functional movement or foot function or hip stability that can track my knee properly in that bottom position of a squat. So I'm going to wear orthotics.
Not with that attitude. There's a book. I'll send you a book. It's called The Secret, where you just kind of think it into being. So if you thought your knee tracked well, then it would probably start tracking well. Try to imagine it and visualize it. And then I guarantee it starts tracking well. But yeah, I mean, you know, and it's the idea is like you're talking about something that may be worth exploring, and that's all it is, right? It's just the idea of hey, you're doing it this way. I've heard it done this way, and there's some research that will back that up. Take a look at it, do what you want with it, and if you don't want to do anything with it, that's on you. But I think the idea of you just saying something and me just sitting there thinking like, well, Paul's a smart guy, so he must know what he's talking about. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I know, but I've read a couple things that disagree with him. So I might as well just express that. You never know, right?
Of course.
And the idea is not to prove you wrong ever, because there's no right or wrong in 99% of the stuff we're doing. I can say something that's proven by science, and then you can say something that rebukes that was proven by science. And it's just a constant back and forth, right? The ideas that I express today in a year to 3 years to 5 years could be proven wrong very simply through science. And that's kind of the whole point, right? The scientific method is to have a hypothesis, test that hypothesis. And if you're a good scientist, you don't like finagle the data to make it fit your narrative. You just say, oh, well, I guess the idea that I had doesn't actually correlate to like making sense. And I think that's the way most conversations should be.
Absolutely. And as a practitioner, I mean, like looking at the programs, I've been coaching for over 10 years now. The programs I wrote 10 years ago are not the same programs I'm writing now.
Right.
And I hope to God they're not the same programs I'm writing 2-3 years from now, or even a year from now, because I should be learning and evolving and growing. And that doesn't happen unless you challenge your own biases and challenge your own narratives and look outside of your field and, you know, deepen your knowledge. You should all people spend way too much time in these echo chambers, and they spend way too much time looking for data to back up what they think they already know.
Yeah.
Rather than looking at the data as, how can I make myself better? How can I like learn something new and build upon what I have, rather than just building this brick wall in front of you and trying to like protect you from all the like the criticism or like critique, you know?
Yeah, because we see that a lot, right? We see a lot of these people who have a big following, they all kind of like stay within their own little group
Yeah.
of like, oh, they're constantly doing interviews with each other. They're constantly patting each other on the back and saying how awesome they are. And then when they actually do get in debates, it's not really a debate at all. It's more or less like, you're really smart. And oh, you're really smart. Oh, stop it. Your idea is the best. And it's like, you guys aren't debating. The best thing I've seen so far is Eric Helms and Brian Miner debating Mike Israetel and another guy. And they actually had back and forth on, and they stood there, each group stood their ground, and they had everything. Well, Mike's is more of a theoretical principle backed by some science, where Eric, and I think they were both theoretical principles backed by science, but it's like they both stood their ground. And I felt like that was one of the better debates that I've ever seen. And another good example would be like the Joe Rogan podcast, when he has people debate, like Lane Norton debated Gary Taubes, right? There's no way Gary Taubes is going to change his opinion, because he put everything he has on that. He makes millions of dollars based on that opinion. So you were going to have both sides bringing about a very good debate. And I think that's the point, right? And yeah, I mean, you know, am I a bit abrasive as ex-military American? Yes, I am. Just a tiny bit. Do I say what's on my mind? Yes, I do. Do I have a filter? No, I don't. And I'm sorry for that if that makes people feel uncomfortable. But that's just that's who I am, right? I'd rather be honest in a way that allows me to feel comfortable expressing myself. If I try to muddy it down, or try to put it in a way where, right, like me and you, we have a relationship where when you say something, I know the intention's never to make me feel bad and never to make me feel a certain way. And you have the, you know, the same thing about me, right?
Right.
So why would I be involved in a communication scheme where I felt like I couldn't be myself and be able to have that authenticity within a conversation? And I think so many people are scared to have that authenticity and be themselves because they're afraid of judgment. They're afraid of people getting their feelings hurt or anything like that. And to me, that's a sign that your communication skills with that person aren't solidified to begin with, right? Your friendship isn't solidified. You've been fake for so long that you're scared to finally be honest and real. And that's your problem. No one else's, right? And, you know, I feel like that's a great way to have conversation. That's the great way to be authentically you all the time. And some people are going to like it and some people aren't.
Yeah, I think I actually had this conversation with another friend of mine about, especially when you have someone who has a more nuanced viewpoint of something and they're able to assimilate different information into their viewpoint and continue to evolve, that person technically, usually on the internet, won't make a ton of money. The people that make a ton of money on the internet are hard-nosed at one thing. We are keto, we are carnivore, we are this, we are that. It's one answer to the question, right? So if you challenge that person with information that differs from their point of view, they will not change their perspective, because that stands to, they will lose money.
Right.
Right. So in my opinion, that's not the type of person you want to be giving your money to in the first place. No. But in where we are, they have only one choice when put against the wall with information, is to double down.
Right.
Right. They have to double down, or they stand to lose money and all their credibility. Yeah, I don't want to be that person.
No, and that's where a lot of science is going now, because people are trying to make money off of their scientific endeavors, and then they're just doubling down on what they're saying. You have people that are in that keto sphere that do research on keto, so they are going to, and they have keto books, so everything that has to reflect upon keto is going to reflect in a positive manner, whether it's in their research or whether it's in the way that they speak. And I think that that's a problem in the scientific field, is when you're trying to make a living outside of the field of research that you're doing, to not smear those lines and muddy those lines so that you can prove your biases, right? Because I think I mean, science is a lot like religion, right? It's the idea of, you start your tenured career and they're like, you have to focus on one thing. This is your niche. You just have to study this, and you don't really get to move from that. So you spend 10 years on something that is your niche. And then anytime that gets challenged, that's your identity now you're afraid to have an open mind to that challenge, so then you just blast it and you just spit out all this biased information that backs it up, and you don't really open yourself up to a good conversation. Same thing with religion, right? You can have people who've been religious their entire life, and then all of a sudden you present to them something that you may have read through Buddhism or through the Quran, and they're going to be like, I can't listen to any of this because it's not the Bible. It's not this. It's not X, Y, or Z. I built my foundation. I built my structure on this. So there's no way that I'm going to be that person that moves that foundation, because my whole life would start to topple then. And it's like me and you, we even had this conversation on Coach's Corner with an athlete asking us why we would try to find research that goes against our biases. And it's like, because we're curious.
Yeah.
We're always open to curiosity. We're always open to learning new things. There's never a conversation that I go into, regardless of the person's intelligence, regardless of the person's history, any of that stuff, without an open mind to learn something from that person. And I think so many people, when they have these conversations, they're so interested in getting out their viewpoints and their answers that they never actually listen and have like an intellectual conversation based off of actually listening to what the other person says.
But so I'm playing devil's advocate here because I know for a fact when I was a young coach, I was that person.
Yeah.
Like I was 100%. I remember, so when I started in the like collegiate coaching field, I took an internship at South Florida with Ron McKeefrey, who the previous year won Strength Coach of the Year. It was when they were ranked like 4th in the nation.
He's a very, very big name in the industry. Yeah.
Yeah. So our first meeting, he was talking about how he was using the Smith machine to squat an athlete. And I was like, why would you use the Smith machine? That's stupid. And I said this in front of a group of people, like our whole internship class. And he let me tell you why. And because he was using it in a knee rehab protocol. And I was like, yeah, but the Smith machine, you're in a vertical path. It's more shear force on the knee itself. Like you're better off doing a box squat. Because at the time I was super West Side. And he let me talk. He's like, yeah, that's a good point. And he just kind of let me go. And afterwards, he approached me. He's like, you're a very smart kid. But until you start approaching conversations like you're not going to go very far.
Yeah, it would have been way better if he went up to you and was like, hey, you're really smart, but if you ever fucking open your mouth like that again in my office, you're off the team.
Yeah, but that changed my perspective as a young coach. And that completely was like, it didn't open me up yet. I still had some learning to do, but it just broadened my horizons and said, hey, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat here, and you better learn, have more than one pair of scissors kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very brutal imagery, but yeah, I get it. Have multiple pairs of scissors when you're doing animal cruelty. Sounds good. And you guys say, I'm a bully. This guy's over here fucking Edward Scissorhands cutting up cats and stuff. But yeah, I think that's like, it's that idea of like the white belt mentality, right? You put yourself into challenging situations that you've never done before so that you can learn and overcome those challenges. And that should be the way that you look at your knowledge structure, right? And it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, where once you start getting into something, you have this idea that you fucking figured it out. You have all the answers. And then you realize, oh shit, I don't know anything. And then you study for 10 years and then you start to think again, like, I got this figured out. Then you meet another person and they put you back into reality. You're like, fuck, I got another 20 years of learning. It's a constant evolution of learning. And the only way to learn is to be around people who are willing to challenge you in a way that allows for freedom of expression and open-ended conversations. And that can be tough, right? Like that can be very tough with someone like me who's pretty abrasive and like pretty abrupt with my conversations. Like I don't really try to ease into it. I pretty much just say what's on my mind, and that can be something for a lot of people that puts them off and intimidates. So that's something that I need to work on, and that's something I'm trying. Trust me, I'm much better than I used to be, which is not very pleasant to think about. But I've always had an open mind. I just don't have the greatest way of expressing it in a non-bully dynamic.
I think when you had the beard, it like softened your look a little bit.
That's the opposite, because I would get people come up to me all the time, be like, hey, I was so scared to talk to you because of the way you looked. You were so intimidating. I still get that. Apparently,
you look like powerlifting Gandalf.
Right. And if people would make fun of me, being like, how old is Tony? Now I have that DHT look, which is like really good look for me and my 35-year-old self, of bald with a lot of facial hair, but I shave it. But yeah, I think the idea is to surround yourself with people that will constantly challenge you in a positive way, right? Not constantly belittle you and berate you and put you down, which I don't really feel like that was what happened even in the slightest last week.
No, me neither.
But I feel like the people who maybe has said that I was bullying you in a non, like, I know some people are going to say that jokingly, but people that maybe actually felt that I was doing that probably have never been in challenging conversations before. They've probably been in a bunch of superficial conversations, and they don't realize the benefit of having someone in your life that's willing to say, hey, you're being fucking stupid right now.
Did you just call me fucking stupid?
Not you personally.
Right.
You're not stupid. Your thought process is stupid.
Oh, okay. That's much better.
Much better. It's like saying, no offense, but I'm going to say something really
with
offensive.
all due respect.
Right. That's when you know you're in the heart of like a good conversation, is when you can slide that in there and continue to humiliate and put that person down.
Of course.
That's
completely disarm them.
Going for the win every time. The conversation is over when the person is crying in the corner and you've won victorious with your hand in the air.
Of course. Do you learn that from Dale? Do you learn that from Dale Carnegie?
Yeah. It's his other book on how to
not win friends and how to influence no one.
How to overpower and humiliate people. It's a pamphlet. It's a short read. It's just
You want to answer some questions?
We just did. I thought we just answered that bullying question. Yeah, let's get to some questions. We had a bit of a repeat question on how to build a strong core. How many times directly do you train your core? You had something similar with how do you train your abdominals. So let's go with abdominals first, and then we can think about the core as an entirety. So go ahead and start that.
So I look at it a bit. So from two different sides. So you look at what the function of the core is within the power lifts themselves, which is stability, right? So we transfer force from the lower body to the upper body. We need as much rigidity and stiffness through the core as possible. So we look anti-rotation, anti-flexion, anti-extension, anti-lateral flexion, and we can train the abs in that regard. The other piece is that once we start to get into the competition movements and including the belt, it does limit our training a little bit. So when we use a belt, we do engage the rectus abdominis to a greater extent than if the belt was off. The problem is our obliques do not. So it's the opposite. Our obliques don't engage as much. So including some oblique work to a bit of a bit more of an emphasis once you're training in a belt is important. But a lot of what we do with the power lifts does train our core. If we're putting anything overhead, like if we're doing any overhead work, we're training our core in anti-extension. If we do any type of deadlifting, anti-flexion, walking out a squat, anti-lateral flexion, anti-rotation. So there is a lot of training to the core through our main movements. So I don't believe that the old saying of if you want to train your abs, just squat, bench, and deadlift. I do think they need some supplemental work. I like to do a little bit of abs every day. Just one movement each day. I also do a little bit of abs in my warm-up as part of my rehab protocol. Most of my athletes will do abs at least, say, a minimum of 2 times a week. I'm trying to think of, I really look at where their deficits lie too. Like if they are having issues in, say they can't walk out a squat. As soon as the weight gets heavy, they have really a lot of trouble walking out. Might include some single arm farmer carries, some side planks, different things of that nature. Even training the abdominals can help with pelvic positioning. So including things like Copenhagen planks can make a large difference. It really depends on the needs of the individual. For me, my ab training, a lot of it's just, I like to train my abs multiple times a week because it makes me feel more rigid under the bar. It's just a perception thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. Can you define, one, you said every day, does that mean every training day?
Sorry, yeah,
And
every training day.
okay, and then two, training obliques. When you say that, a lot of people may think like the fucking side bends, right? That's right.
No,
So
you
how
train
do you train your obliques?
so you train the obliques in the manner in which you want that, like specific adaptation to impose demands. So if you're, again, using the squat walkout as an example, if you're having trouble stabilizing the barbell as you walk out your squat, so that's an anti-lateral flexion. So it could be something like a side plank, or if the bar is windmilling on you, anti-lateral or anti-rotation, you could do something like a pow-off press or a landmine rotation, something to challenge the midsection in that transverse plane. It's always going to be specific to what you're trying to get out of the movement.
Yeah. Now, some people would say that by twisting and flexion through an abdominal movement pattern is actually facilitating the antithesis of what you want to do. So if you are doing a rotational movement like the landmine and you're twisting your body, that's actually twisting in a sense that you're mimicking what you would do under the bar. Is that something that you agree with? And the same thing with like cable crunches, right? If you're doing cable crunches and you're flexing into it, do you think that that's a negative thing? Do you think that people say that you're teaching your body to do those movements under load, and then all of a sudden you're going to get under the squat bar and you're gonna be like, this should be a cable crunch, and they go down and you back up?
No, I don't. I don't. With the landmine rotation, the way I teach it is with the only thing that's moving is the arms. So you're really anti-rotation. But in terms of like a cable crunch, like if you're training the abdominals to flex the spine, do I think that when you get under a barbell, you're going to flex under the barbell? No, I don't think so.
Right. And you got to think too, right? Like, well, what creates a rigid core? What creates a rigid midsection? And that's like girth, right? Girth is something that you desire as a powerlifter. You don't want a teeny tiny waist. Anyone that's ever dieted, they'll realize as soon as their waist gets smaller, that their lifts feel very unbalanced. They feel much heavier, and think every time they think they're getting weaker. And it's like, you're not getting weaker. You just lost inches off your waist, and that provides the most amount of stability. So you'll see guys who are very strong. Dan Green, for one, he has a big abdominal area and he trains it, right? So you have to understand, right? Hypertrophy is something that you want within your abdominal wall so that it can get a little bit bigger. So if you're just training things in an isometric fashion, is there muscle growth there? Yeah, but is there going to be more muscle growth if you're training it in a hypertrophy type manner? No, of course not, right? Hypertrophy stimulates and trumps all when it comes to muscle growth. So thinking about a selection of movements that require some type of hypertrophy and then some type of isometric hold is a great way to think about trying to train those movements in a consistent manner throughout the week. So maybe one day you're doing higher volume abdominal work under load, and then another day you're doing the anti-flexion, anti-lateral stuff under load. Everything needs to be done under load. You're not doing fucking flutter kicks and you're not doing goddamn crunches and stuff like that. Everything needs to be done under load for the most part. Hanging leg raises are another good one, because you're thinking about, well, what stabilizes the pelvis? And you have your hip flexors, you have your psoas, you have your glutes, you have your lats, you have your abdominal. So that's what I think when I think of core, is like, how can I integrate all those things into movement patterns that's going to allow me to not only hypertrophy those movements, but also bring stability within those. So thinking of single leg back extensions, single leg curls, abdominal hanging leg raises against weight or against a band or something like that. And then also single arm lats, single arm rows, single arm lat pull downs, to where you're challenging anti-rotation, suitcase carries. Things along those lines are going to be the things, the impetus beyond just the abdominal training, that's going to actually get you a lot stronger under the load. But yeah, I would think trying to get as big as I can within those abdominal muscles, but then also creating stability. So having that on and off again will allow you not only to train every day, and understanding that the abs are a high fatigue, high resistance type of exercise where you can train them every day, much like calves and traps and shit like that. You can train every day and not really have issues with it.
I like what you said about having like a repertoire of exercises that like you've identified as kind of the ones that you think are going to address your issues. So using myself as an example, I've been doing Palloff presses because I've identified that within my gait cycle, there are some issues with pelvic positioning. So I get into my gait cycle, into that split stance position, and then I use the band, or you could use a cable, to engage my abdominals in an anti-rotational fashion. I've identified a weakness in my movement pattern, so I'm addressing it with a movement that is more specific to that issue. Same thing you mentioned with I actually really like doing GHD sit-ups.
Yep.
Because I find that I get really good carryover to my hip flexion strength, which is a weakness for me, by doing those, because they engage my hip flexors within my trunk stability. So the specific exercises that you identify, just have an emphasis for each. Say you train 4 days a week, and say you have 6 different ab exercises that you like to do, just rotate through them. It doesn't have to be fancy, right? Like I think people try to make it a little, especially ab training, I feel like people try to make it a lot more complicated than it needs to be.
Oh yeah.
But like if you have, 6 exercises, you train 4 days a week, you rotate through a different one each day, you'll never get bored and you'll continue to make progress.
And then also too, understanding the dynamics of posture and abdominal, like diaphragmatic breathing and things like that to strengthen the diaphragm to create better postural alignment are going to also be ways to strengthen up your ability to stabilize under heavy loads. So if you're not training your breath work and you're not training your diaphragm to get stronger, then if that's your weakest link, it doesn't matter how strong your abs are. If your diaphragm can't hold that position of stability within the vertebrae, then you're going to cave every single time because you're not training your diaphragm to get stronger, whether it be through flexion and extension or whether it be through breath work through rotation as well. The diaphragm is something that is a muscle that needs to be trained as such. And just by focusing on your breath work too, you're also going to improve your posture as well. And if your posture is improved, then it's going to be a lot easier to stack yourself under the bar. So thinking about it in terms of you should be doing breath work every single day. One, it's going to help in parasympathetic tone. It's going to help with recovery. It's going to help with your ability to decrease anxiety, depression, stress. All those things are beneficial. But then for us meatheads that can't really fantasize like the idea of breathing for 20 minutes in a yoga pose, it's like, well, if you can, you're also strengthening your abdominal wall. So maybe that can help things click a little bit better when you are thinking about your breath work. You're not doing it just to do it. There is a purpose behind it beyond just the relaxation and the restoration techniques of it.
Do you prescribe that sort of, like, would you program that for your athlete or just, yeah? Oh, cool.
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Yeah. If they really need it, like Christian, whether or not he does it, I don't know. So this is me calling you out, Christian Anto, if you're not doing this, but I told him he has a little bit of, is there client confidentiality? I don't think there's that.
It's just you and me talking, dude.
Right. So yes, if you don't like this, Christian, you gave me a 1-star rating, so the payback, I guess. But he has a little bit of anxiety on meet day. So we're trying to figure out ways to create anxious moments that he can overcome on his day-to-day life. So thinking about the idea of inoculating him to ice baths, and he can get into an ice bath, and that's going to be that high anxious arousal. And then he has to learn to calm himself down under that. And that's through breath work. That's through either box breathing, or you can also practice some type of Wim Hof breathing that can get you to more sympathetic arousal state. But a lot of guys, I just keep it very simple with box breathing, where it's like a 4-second inhale, and then a 5 to 6 second exhale, and then a 1 to 2 second pause, and then repeat that, right? Always focusing on the exhale as much as possible and the pause at the end of an exhale, because we do so much inhalation, and inhalation is more sympathetically driven, where the exhale is more parasympathetically driven. So if we can stay in that zone a lot more, and that also is what strengthens your diaphragm a little bit more, right? Because as you inhale, your lungs expand, your diaphragm shrinks, your psoas shrinks. But then as you exhale, your diaphragm expands, and it also expands all those other things as well. So you get that a lot stronger. So that's something that I prescribe if people need that.
That's something I've only recently implemented, like structured into my training, like doing it post-workout to kind of come down. And it's actually improved my sleep quality quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Because I train in the evening. So I train around 5. I've reduced my caffeine intake, of course, but so training at 5, I'll usually finish around like 7:30, and I'll do about 10 minutes of just diaphragmatic breathing. I actually do it laying on one of those really soft balls in my belly, just for more proprioception of where my breath is going. Dude, it's made a crazy difference. I'm so much more relaxed in the evening.
Yeah, people don't think about that, man. I realized that heavily when I was doing jujitsu at one of the jujitsu classes was at 7:30 at night.
Oof.
So then I'd get home at like 9:30, eating also increases your body temperature as well. And I would notice on my Aura ring and my Whoop that my sleep would suffer. It would take me so much longer to get my heart rate down. It would take me so much longer to get my body temperature down that my sleep was always fucked. And, ever since then, I try to go to like the noon classes, 11:30 classes and stuff like that so that I don't have those disturbances. But that's such a good point. Having some type of cool down modality has been proven time and time again to not only start the recovery process a little bit faster, your ability to digest your post-workout meal is going to improve.
Yep.
And then also your ability to fall asleep and get into that state is going to be so much better. So yeah, definitely really good points there. Speaking of sleep, Miss K asks, sleep hygiene pointers for athletes. So Kaylee, this is a great question because people drop the ball on this all the time.
Yeah.
A good resource, and I know he's come under a little bit of criticism as of late, but Matthew Walker is a good resource on sleep. Are you making that face? Why?
I didn't know he was come under fire lately.
Yeah,
Everything I've heard from him has been great.
Right. Apparently, in his book, he finagles things a little bit to meet his narrative. He doesn't necessarily uh, give credence to the studies like 100%.
Ooh.
But I don't know. He went back on Peter Attia and kind of like debunked all that. So, who knows? He could just be someone that got really popular and people love to hate on people who've made a living for themselves. But yeah, that's a really good book. You can also listen to his podcast on Peter Attia, The Drive, where he goes over. They did the original one was like 3 2-hour long podcast, so 6 hours on sleep, and you're like fucking blown away by the end of it.
Wow.
Yeah, so sleep hygiene to me starts first thing in the morning when you wake up, and for me it's the idea of I want to, as you sleep, you have a lot of shallow breathing, so that can create some issues with carbon dioxide buildup. So when I wake up, I want to think about trying to off-put as much carbon dioxide as possible first thing in the morning. So you can do that with either breath work or you can do that with some form of exercise first thing in the morning just to get your heart rate up, just to get you breathing a little bit heavier. And then I typically do a morning walk as the sun is going up. And that's been proven with the view on the horizon with the side-to-side eye movement is also been proven to lower depression, lower anxiety, lower a bunch of stress and stuff like that. So, and as the hues start to come up with the sun, you'll also get the signaling of your body to start releasing those hormones that start to put your circadian rhythm into a more proper sphere, right? And so then throughout the day, the idea is to get as much sunshine as possible. So if you're someone that works in the office all day, if you're someone that lives in fucking shitty Canada where the sun never comes out, or you don't want to leave your house. I had a client send me the weather forecast for next week. It was -30, 4 days. I was like, where the fuck do you live? Is Santa, like, work out with Santa Claus? No, Julianne probably lives in a shitty place too. This guy was Ray. He's a strongman guy.
Oh, they've been like -40 the last couple of days.
Yeah,
out there.
Fuck that, man.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things, like try to get as much sun as possible. There are some apps, I don't know them off the top of my head, that have the lux, that you can check the lux on lights to see how much lux you're getting throughout the day. And I think you want close to like 100,000 lux. And so you want to record that. So say you have a sad lamp or a lamp that produces sun exposure. I know they usually sell them at 10,000 lux. You can put the phone up to it and it'll tell you if you're really there. You can do stuff by the windowsill, even though the sun may not be out, it's still going to be better than nothing. So having, maybe doing your work by the windowsill, something like that can help, but you want as much light exposure as possible. You also want to exercise kind of first thing in the morning. Like we just talked about the reasons why that can be beneficial. Also, is the release of dopamine while you're training, and then the release of serotonin afterwards can help start to set that circadian rhythm. And then the same thing as the sun's going down, you can also go for a walk, and the same concept as when the hues are coming up, the hues are going down, it can start to release GABA and melatonin within your brain structure, which is going to help you sleep a lot better. And then also when thinking about sleep quality, I'm going to steal everything, so you might not have anything else to
I
say,
have some
man.
points for sure.
Oh, good. I'm not done yet. So wait,
That's
I'm going to
okay.
destroy your points. I can see it in your eyes what you're going to say. So
I should just start taking notes again.
oh, you should. That boosts my ego really big. Yeah. So then you want to think about the idea of when your last meal is, chrononutrition, right? The idea of trying to time your food with when you sleep. So some research has shown that having, a bigger meal around 5 o'clock with carbohydrates in it may help you sleep a little bit better. But anything past that time frame may be so big and it may have impact on your sleep. It's not going to have impact on your weight like a lot of people thought, but maybe the later you eat will have an impact on your sleep and your ability to get into deep sleep and REM sleep. So thinking about, when you're sleeping and when you're eating is something that can be valuable, and just playing around with those macronutrients. Some people do better with carbohydrates because it releases serotonin. Having some type of turkey or white meat that releases tryptophan can also be very beneficial to improving your sleep. I'm not a huge fan of prescribing like a bunch of sleep stuff, especially hormonal ones. We do have melatonin and 5-HTP in our products, but they're at such a low dose that it doesn't actually interfere with your hormone signaling. So that's something to be on the lookout for. And then also sleep as in as dark a room as possible. So you want your blackout curtains. You can have an eye mask on if that helps you. If they don't make any big enough for my head, so I'm a little disappointed in that. But that's something I can take up with the manufacturers. Some type of white noise. I have an air purifier that produces white noise. If you have a loud area, maybe some type of hearing devices to drown that out. And then also keeping your room as cold as possible. I think 67 degrees or below is kind of the preferred thing. If you're someone that kind of moves around a lot, maybe getting a weighted blanket can help out. If you're someone that's overly hot and you sleep with someone who's overly cold, get a chili pad for your side of the bed. But yeah, those are all things that can help. There is a little bit of research showing that maybe taking like a hot cold bath before bedtime can be something that can cool you down and get you into a sleep mode a little bit better. And then for me, what I've noticed anecdotally, I don't know if there's any research on it, but I used to watch a little bit of TV before I go to bed. That'd be like the only time I watch TV. Now I used to watch like 45 minutes to an hour of TV between the hours of 8 to 9. And then I cut that out and now I read from 8 to 9. And I noticed that my deep sleep would be at like 10 to 12 minutes on my Oura Ring. And now that I read, it's over an hour every single time that I'm just reading and not watching TV. So there's something to be said about that. I do wear blue light blockers as well. The research on that is very much iffy, but I've been placeboed into fucking thinking they work. So now I'm afraid not to wear them, even though when I've not worn them before, then I slept just fine. But yeah, and because it seems like, I think as long as you don't have overhead lights above the hours of 12 to 4, in between 12 to 4, that's when you can get sleep disturbances from light exposure if you're up at those hours. So if you are up at those hours, try not to have overhead light, try to have light that's right about eye level, can be also beneficial. But yeah, that's kind of the things that I think about. And also too, making sure that your sleep consistency is at a high threshold. So if you go to bed between the hours, like me, like an old man, of like 9 and 9:45, I go to bed no matter what at that time, then it's consistent. Then your body has that routine and that habit built in. So then it's constantly ready to go to bed at that time. And then I don't set an alarm. So I wake up between the hours of 4:30 and 5:30 every day. And it's just very consistent. And I think that consistency allows me to go to bed pretty easily. What do you got, big guy?
You don't set an alarm?
No, I live a very, very flush life. I don't have to do that.
Cool. No, I set an alarm, but
you got a real job.
I watch, so it like vibrates instead of. I do have a real job. Yeah, for now.
Do you have
all really good points?
Before you go on, do you have an alarm that's like loud, obnoxious alarm, or do you have one of those alarms where it's like It's like a light alarm where it rises like the sun would. I've heard
So
those are really good.
it starts with my watch vibrating, which usually wakes me up. And then it's a very light, like peaceful sound that slowly gets a little bit louder. So it's like the stock one that comes in the iWatch. It's lovely.
Oh, nice.
Lovely.
Yeah.
But so all really good points. And it does, like, you talked for a really long time. So there's a lot to do. But no. That's good. It just hits home that there's a lot that can affect your sleep and a lot that can actually serve to improve it. So there's a lot of different ways that you mentioned that you can manipulate how good or how bad your sleep's going to be. So just running through what you said again, you're waking up at a regular time, some form of sunlight, some form of activity, you're eating on a regular schedule throughout the day, because a lot of people don't realize that cortisol is what wakes you up. Cortisol starts mobilizing nutrients. So by having a little bit of carbohydrates first meal, some people argue that if you want to take advantage of that cortisol for fat loss, you can avoid carbs at your first meal. We know that 24-hour, macronutrients, what's going to make the difference, not so much the hormonal stuff, but it's worth mentioning. So eating at regular intervals. Personally, I found the blue light glasses effective, especially because I do stare at a screen all day with my full-time job. And then I stare at a screen doing my coaching stuff. Since getting eyeglasses that have a blue light filter, I noticed that I am able to kind of downregulate a little bit better. For myself, I train in the evening. So sleep hygiene for me, I make sure to do as best I can during the day, but like Tony said, I have a full-time job, so not a lot is within my control. So I do the morning routine, same as him. I manage my meals throughout the day. I train at 5 p.m., which means I don't have caffeine after 3 p.m. And I try my best not to have a pre-workout. Sometimes I do, but it's very rare. And I know it's going to affect my sleep. I just make the exception on that day. Once I'm done training, everything I do is about getting ready for sleep. So I do my breath work after training to help me come down, get more parasympathetic dominant. I have a shower and then I eat. So there's a little bit of time between training and food. By that time, it's about 8:30. So between 8:30 and when I go to bed at 10, I try to leave 30 minutes without a screen. I still do have some work to do once I finish training, so that's unavoidable for me. And the key with what I'm trying to say is we optimize as best we can. We don't hamper on the details, right? We do our best with what we have where we're at. There have been times where I'm working at my laptop. I literally close my laptop, walk into my bed and try to fall asleep. It's not ideal, but it's the situation. But as Tony said, the temperature in my room is always cold. I always have a fan on. I'll even leave the window open in the winter sometimes. Just
You're brave, man.
I sweat like crazy. I'm naturally just like a sweaty sleeper. And if someone else is sleeping with me, it's even worse. So it's more so to save them than for me. And my room is completely black. I have blackout blinds, and I close my door so that none of the other windows in the house are shining through in my room. And I never watch TV in bed. If I'm going to be in bed, this is something that a lot of people do wrong, in my opinion, is they'll either watch TV before bed or they do stuff in their bedroom that has nothing to do with sleep. So if you speak to any occupational therapist, they will tell you that the only thing you should ever do in your bedroom is have sex and sleep.
Yeah.
Because you want to make that association that your bedroom is a relaxing place. And something I do want to address, because a lot of us do have sleep problems, and I've dealt with insomnia and different sleep issues in the past. Sleep hygiene is more than just how you prepare for sleep. If you wake up during the night and you're having trouble falling back to sleep, get out of bed, go read, go listen to something that's boring, go do something that's passive, no light or very little light, until you get sleepy again, back to your bed. Again, making the association between sleep and your bed, sleep and your bedroom. Then if you are having trouble with waking up very early, say you're only sleeping for 5 hours, but you wake up and you're ready to rock, get up and start your day. if you get in the habit of trying to fall back asleep or napping or whatever in that like morning wake up period, that's what will mess up your circadian rhythm for the next night. The other thing is make sure to do some form of exercise every day. And these recommendations are coming from my experience in the disability field, where we deal with mental health and people have sleep issues all the time, right? So if you're not doing any exercise, that can absolutely affect your sleep. So get more tired, be more active on that day so that there's more sleep drive when you go to bed. A lot of what we're doing during the day is kind of creating the drive for your body to sleep, accumulating fatigue so that you can actually fall asleep. So those are just the other two, like addressing sleep problems when they come up is something that I deal with a lot at work. And we do some like coaching and stuff, but some people do need like professional assistance with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And when you talk about like general supplementation with regards to sleep, for me, it's about relaxation. So I will have like a nighttime tea sometimes, just a warm tea, not uncaffeinated. A lot of magnesium. I use Restoration, as Tony mentioned. It doesn't have a lot of melatonin. I find melatonin screws my sleep if I take it on its own.
Yeah.
So a little bit of it is great, but magnesium is something I even take extra of to help me relax. Zinc B6, like a ZMA supplement, is also very effective if you don't want to get restoration. But yeah, I think we covered it. It was good.
Yeah. Magnesium. I like magnesium threonate for sleep. You have a certain kind.
I have glycinate that I've been taking.
Okay, so if you guys want like an inferior one, go with glycinate. But if you want a superior one, go with magnesium threonate, because Tony said so.
Is that what's in Restoration?
It's an expensive one, but no, it's not. It is not.
Okay.
But magnesium threonate is also one that's been shown to help with neural pathways as well, and neuroplasticity. Yeah, so it's really good for deep learning type stuff. But it's one of the better magnesiums. It is a little bit expensive. I go with life extension. Life extensions or
sleep
Jaro.
Stuff, I'll spend the money, man. Like,
yeah,
sleep to me, as soon as I started paying more attention to my sleep, everything else in my life improved.
Yeah.
And it's so valuable.
I think that in terms of like trying to improve performance, trying to improve body composition, sleep is the first thing that I try to make sure people are getting. And I feel bad, man. Like I got this guy, Zach, who he gets like 5 hours of sleep every day due to his job. And it's one of those shift jobs. And it's like, man, if I was you, I'd find a new job. Like if you look at the research on shift work, it's taken years and years off your life, and it's never really desired. I've never met someone who's like fucking looking forward to this 12 to 10 shift that I have. No
my
one
girlfriend works 7 to 7s at night, 7 to 7 some nights. And I have a few clients that are nurses that will work like day, night. And it's just
rough.
By the end of that fourth shift in a row, they're just zombies.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. Your girlfriend, doctor?
She just works in the emergency room
as a nurse.
A clerk.
Oh, clerk. Okay. Isn't she? I thought you said she was. Is she working on getting her degree? And
she's applying to be a firefighter right now.
That's right, firefighter.
Going through that, which is 2024s.
Yeah, it's a rough job. That's for sure. Since we actually have, from what I've been told, a former strength and conditioning coach on the podcast.
Yeah.
Somebody asked. So I don't ever give you credit for that. I just say that you went to school, and then I just completely discredit everything else that you've done after that.
It's whatever, man.
So fusing strength training with BJJ. Do you have any experience with that? Because there are a lot of people who are getting into jiu-jitsu, and it is a great sport to get into. I can't recommend it enough. Be prepared to get injured a little bit more than you would like to. But besides that, it's a fascinating sport. But how would you train for it, Mr. Strength and Conditioning? 3 to 4 years of strength and conditioning?
5. 6.
Which one is it, man? Okay. 6 years. 6 years.
I still have some pro players on my coaching roster. So I'm doing okay.
Dang, look at you.
Yeah.
Well, you one up me. I used to have pro players on my roster, but they've significantly passed me by.
Yeah. The pajama wrestling is very interesting.
Don't be
It's
disrespectful. That is a geezer, and you will enunciate it and give it the proper respect.
Okay, so number one, I would look at what the demands on the schedule are. So how many days a week are you actually practicing your sport? For most people, if it's a recreational thing, maybe 3-4 times a week. Would that be fair?
Yeah, no, 2 to 3 if it's recreational, not as
Two,
many
two
as
to three.
4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then that means that you're getting some sport specific work. We'll say 3 times a week. We'll
Yeah,
assume three.
I'd say 45 minutes of specific work, 15 minutes of cool down and warm ups type stuff. So 45 minutes, 3 days a week as a recreational person.
So 3 days a week, you're getting about 45 minutes of skill work, and then 15 minutes we won't even talk about it. So 45 minutes. That means those days, if you're looking at the way you structure a program for the best results, in my opinion, you look at a high-low sequencing. So any type of skill work is going to be high CNS demand because you're trying to assimilate new knowledge. So on those high CNS days, I would do all of my high CNS work, whether it would be high CNS conditioning. So this would be more lactate type stuff, more sprints, more plyometrics, that sort of thing. And any type of heavy lifting. That would be your high CNS days. Your low CNS days would typically either, in my opinion, I would want to try and follow that day with a low day and then maybe a rest day. But the low day would be all of your assistance work, more repetition style work. If you were doing any type of hypertrophy stimulus stuff, it would be that next day.
Question.
Yes, I know what you're going to say.
Oh, well, then answer it.
You're going to say that higher repetition stress the CNS to a greater degree.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're taking them to failure.
Okay. Well, how else would you train?
You don't have to go that close to failure.
That's what
it depends.
Sissies do.
Okay. It depends. I would say.
Talking about pajama wrestling. All we know is failure training.
Fair. Yeah. You're a failure for putting on pajamas and wrestling. So I would use that type of high-low sequencing. So repetitive effort work, lower CNS demand, lower skill type of work would be qualified as low. And then anything that would be heavy skill or lactic and very like intensive conditioning would be high. And then if you were going to train, we'll say 5 training days a week with 2 rest days, you would couple the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training with the weight training. I have found the best results to be to lift weights prior to, but you could, like if you're a beginner, you might want to prioritize your skill of the activity before your weight training. So you would want to prioritize your fatigue for that. So then I would do the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and then follow it with weights. The reason I say I've found it to be more beneficial to do the weights prior is because in all the schools that we've done this high-low sequencing, so like when we did it at South Florida, when we did it at Queens, the kids actually practiced better after lifting. And we were able to keep the volume much lower in the training. So that would be how I would structure it in that manner, but also keeping in mind that we're training concurrently, right? So we're doing skill activities, we're doing strength activities, we're doing some type of hypertrophy activity. We just have to structure it in a way that allows the person to recover between sessions.
Yeah. So if anyone's interested in like the high-low, that was made popular by Charles Francis. He has some good books about it. He was the Canadian sprint coach when Ben Johnson was there, when Canada actually had like a really, really good track and field team. Charlie Francis.
Still pretty good.
Debatable.
Another reading source for that would be anything by James Smith.
Good luck. But yeah, his
James Smith, he used to go by
The Thinker.
What?
The Thinker, James
You
Smith.
cut out.
I
Yeah,
was
the
saying,
thinker. Yeah,
yeah,
on Elite FTS.
I was saying good luck with that. He writes dense material, but yeah, I have all his books. And the one he
Me
just
too.
put out, General Dynamics of Coaching, something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, really good book. That's like an all-encompassing idea of integrating strength and conditioning coach, sports coach, and everything in between, all in one. That's why he's no longer in the field of strength and conditioning, and he just does private contracting, is because he's bridging the gap of everything. Whereas when, as a strength and conditioning coach, you're going to have the position coach telling you what he wants his guys to do. You have the head coach, then you have the personal trainer, athletic
Oh
trainer. It's
yeah.
like, fuck, man. Yeah. So the integration is important when it comes to, so that's one way of doing it. And I
Yep.
definitely think that that's a great way of doing it. From a power lifter transitioning into a jiu-jitsu sport, like or any type of sport really, I would rather them do microdosing every day of not psilocybin, but of the actual training stimulus, right?
Okay.
And this is made really popular by Corey Schlesinger, who's the strength and conditioning coach for the Phoenix Suns. And they do about 30-minute of microdose type training every single day. And that way their body's just moving and they're doing something every day, training different modalities within that paradigm. Because for me, going from a powerlifting perspective to an athletic perspective, there's going to have to be a lot of work done on simple things like better body awareness, better movement kinetics, doing sagittal, lateral, frontal plane type movements, all in integration style format, thinking about how can I move in a way that's going to impose those demands that are very similar to the sport, and being able to do that with a transfer of strength, right? Because if you're so used to being a statically strong person and then you go into dynamic movements, you're going to get injured. That's what happened to me. That's why I tore my abdomen, because I've been statically strong for 8 years and now I'm trying to use that strength and my size in inadequate ways because I don't have the prerequisite range of motion to do those things. And that's when I tore my abdominal. So I would think originally starting off doing a bunch of everyday microdosing type of movements of like combative rolls, falls, side lunges, Cossack squats,
Yeah.
doing a bunch of that stuff, and then combating that with like 1 day strength training, pick one exercise, train it hard, train it heavy, get in, get out type of deal, and then do your sport skill acquisition as much as possible as a beginner. I think that's the most important way to transition. No matter what, as a power lifter, you're going to be stronger than every fucking person in that gym. So you don't really need to bias strength training that much. You need to bias training as an athlete. So I wouldn't even think about, improving my squat, bench press, or deadlift. I would think about what exercises are going to transition me to being the best athlete so I don't get injured first and foremost. And that may take 1 year to 2 years of doing that before you correct all the deficiencies that you've had. So I would think about doing more single arm stuff, single leg stuff, moving in different planes of motion, doing things that require some type of plyometric into some type of sprint, into some type of something else, right? So where you're constantly challenging the dynamics of movement structure. And that's the thing that I would focus on the most. So maybe like 30, 45 minutes of just microdosing every day of some type of movement under load, along with the idea that you're also training skill acquisition as much as possible. And then I agree with you on the idea of when to implement that, right? Like if you're doing it, if you're doing your strength training first thing and you're in decent shape, then your skill acquisition won't be hindered. And now if you're in horrible shape, do skill acquisition first,
Right.
get fatigued, and then wait 6 hours if you can, to do some type of strength training afterwards. But there's going to be a lot of auto regulation to that program,
Totally.
because have you ever done jiu-jitsu? I don't think you have you?
I haven't. No.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about that sport, but I'll do it and I'll feel great while I'm doing it, and then I'll drive home and I feel like I got hit by a fucking train every time I get out of my car. Everything hurts.
That's how I felt when I took up mountain biking.
Right. So it might just be a different modality that you're not used to. You're gonna feel
I think
great.
the anxiety. I think it's like because you're like this the whole time. But I think that a big point for people to take away is like you did a really good needs assessment on yourself. You looked at your specific needs. You looked at the needs of the sport, and you looked at like what tools you had at your disposal, and you just picked the appropriate ones and tried it. But I guarantee you're still adapting your plan. right?
Oh, yeah, 100%, man. 100%. It's an adaptive process. That's why it's good to be over analytical as you're a
For
coach of
sure.
yourself, right? Not
Agreed.
necessarily don't be over analytical while you're in the process, but once you're done training, take a step back and be like, did this go, look at it in a weak microcosm of like, am I moving in the right direction? And then constantly try to inundate different things. Because the thing with sports is that the stimulus is going to be in such a manner that you just don't know what's going to happen. Like that's why I haven't gone back to jujitsu yet, because I can't control what the other person's doing. So I feel like my abdomen is like healthy enough to do something. So I might start doing Muay Thai, because with Muay Thai, I still can control what somebody's doing to my leg for the most part. But with jujitsu, I can't. But I have to train in a manner that will allow me to absorb that type of force too. So you're thinking about not only producing force, but you're thinking about absorbing force as an athlete as well. And the more you can absorb force, the more you can train to absorb force, I think the less likely you are to get injured. Now, injuries happen and there's a lot of dynamics that will cause an injury. But for me, that's what I think about when training athletes, like absorption, deceleration training, everything that we don't do, that's what we're training. Because when you get on the field, you're going to accelerate, you're going to do all that stuff. Learning how to slow down, learn how to absorb force is going to be the most important thing. And then as a strength athlete in a bilateral movement, you're thinking about how can I transfer this force into sport without getting fucked up? And then that's when it requires a lot of inefficiencies, understanding the dynamics of your sport, that you're going to be in more internal rotation type movements than you've ever been in your entire life. And you're like, I need to fucking fix this real fast or I'm going to get jammed up.
Totally. So I haven't done it. I'm afraid to get my shit snapped.
Oh man, it's so fun. I was talking to Emma about this. I was saying that one of the best things you can do in the world is wrestle around in pajamas and get someone in a chokehold to where they're like, and you're like, fuck yeah, man, I got you. Like I control you. I control you. It's great. And then you're like, then he does it to you. And then you're like, oh, now we have this community of he could have killed me. I could have killed you. Now we're best friends. Let's have a barbecue.
I love it.
It's great. It is great. All right. That's all we have, folks. That's all we have today. Thank you so much for the questions, guys. We really appreciate it. I hope that the conversation led you guys to think about different ways of challenging yourself. I think that's one of the most important things to get out of this conversation today is challenge your beliefs, challenge your norms, find people that do that in an authentic way to where you feel open that you can have those conversations. And then you're going to learn so much from those people. And if you have people that don't do that in your life, maybe reconsider having them in your life, reconsider the structure and the community that you have around you. Any closing words?
Fuck them.
There you go, from Mr. Canada himself. All right, guys. So if you like the podcast, please go to iTunes. It's under Coach's Corner now, because everything is under the Coach's Corner banner. So we have Coach's Corner, then we'll also have Coach's Corner University podcast coming out. And those are going to be interviews with special guests focusing on singular topics to go over as much as we can. And that'll be provided a little bit here, but the entire podcast, the entire interview is going to be on coachescorneru.com. So if you're interested in that and interested in all the reviews and modalities that we're putting up there, please check it out, Coach's Corner U, and check them out on Instagram as well, so you can see snippets of what we're doing. Subject Zero Steps, we talked about that a little bit today with restoration and the sleep aid, so make sure you check them out as well. MetroLife, if you're looking for subjective feedback markers to allow yourself to auto-regulate and figure out where your body's at, where your mind's at, mental health and physical health, all combined in one. And then also baconandbarbells.co. You can use the code Paul10 to check out their clothes and get a discount. And also with Subject Zero Steps Beyond 10, you can get a discount as well. If you like the show, go to iTunes, leave a review, a 5-star rating. Like I said, it's under Coach's Corner now. So check it out, leave a review. Appreciate the questions, guys, and we'll catch you next time.